called the self nature or the essential nature or the fundamental nature, and sometimes just called the nature. This is the Buddha nature, the capacity for awakening that all have. When you're doing this, the mind has to be, in a sense, cleansed or untangled. I like the idea of untangled because it matches with the Chinese expression that the end result of this in Sanskrit is moksha, which means, anybody? Not mocha, moksha. Moksha? You've heard of pratimoksha? Patimoksha, huh? Liberation. So moksha means the liberated, enlightened state that's the end of suffering. And I didn't put the quote up last week when we were talking about nirvana, but there's one passage where the Buddha talks about nirvana, and he says there is a state that is neither earth, air, fire, nor water. In other words, it's not limited to the body. It's not even limited to the mind. It's neither in this place nor another place, so it's not confined by time or space. I only call it the end of suffering or the end of dukkha. And that's the definition the Buddha gave to nirvana. So nirvana is a state of liberation from suffering. And that can be achieved at any moment, potentially. It's not something that happens after you die. It's a state of liberated awareness. So, as I was saying, the Chinese for this is different words, but one, anybody know for liberation? Jieto. And jieto means what? Sometimes called chieto, but jieto. Anybody? I don't. Okay, so I said demons, everybody went into Sabbati. Come on back, I'll let you know when we go into demons, so you can be ready. Jieto means what? Come on, you guys know the Chinese. Unbounded or untied, untangled, to untie. So jieto means to be untied from confusion. So, but in going back to the state of liberation, in the untying, what is tied up is called klesha, or the obstacles and impediments of bodhi. Okay, so you're following the logic here. So we've taken the essential nature, and as the quote I was giving you last week, I reversed the four truths and said we start with the third of the liberated state of freedom from suffering, but then we get lost and we lose it, we tangle it, and it becomes afflictions. And the sixth patriarch says it's like turning water into ice. Okay, so water is that pure essential nature, and then constrained, frozen, it becomes ice and hard, and then, but can be melted again and turned back into Bodhi. It's a single substance in two different forms. So this is the non-dual nature of this teaching. It's really interesting. So when he says, you go back into this, you have to melt the ice. And before the ice melts, it's an obstacle, it's an impediment. So you have to be strong and persevering. He says, hold to your meditation topic, hold the principle, have discernment. In the passage before, he says, see these things as illusions, as dreams, as shadows. And if you can pass through and not be turned by it, you will get a measureless light ease and be completely free and unencumbered. That's the previous. Now, as often with what Han Chan's doing here, he's doing contrasting. On the other hand, you could say, if you are not clear about what's happening and you're not patient and persevering and mostly have a level mind, don't go up or down on any of these states. Just be really calm and serene, even though it may feel like you're riding down in a white knuckle ride on a toboggan. Well, I use toboggan from the Midwest on an icy toboggan slope. Anybody knows what I'm talking about here? How many people have ridden a toboggan before? Yeah. It can be pretty hairy, right? Yeah. Everybody gets on this toboggan. It's a long wooden... Drop a toboggan if you can, as long as we're... You can see the toboggan. I really like this. This is fun. I just magically conjure up, give me a toboggan. There's a toboggan. You see it? And it's really slick on the bottom. Yeah, there you go. And you sit on the toboggan, usually a bunch of people, and you inch off the top of the hill, and then you go down, and it picks up speed. And by the way, there's no steering wheel. and there's no brakes. So depending on where you are, we used to go out at night, and we couldn't really see where we were going. We'd just get on the top of the hill and go down. And sometimes you'd actually be airborne. People would be falling off. It wasn't, on some occasions, we went to the emergency room after. So cultivating in this way sometimes is like riding a toboggan. Okay? So you're going down, but if you're patient, if you're steady, if you persevere, you will reach your goal. So he's saying, on the other hand, if you don't, and now he's going to go into the opposite, because for this teaching to be valuable, he can't just tell us about all the pleasant or wholesome or enlightened states are to come. He has to also say, be careful, because the opposite can happen. And actually, as you go through the entanglement, the opposite often does happen, because you reach a knot. You're going along, you resolve to come to the monastery, you resolve to go to the meditation session, everything is really good, you're taking care of your business, and then something happens, something comes up, often before you get there. A phone call comes in, an old friend calls, a debt comes due, they call from work and say, I'm sorry, your vacation for this week is canceled. Often an old boyfriend or girlfriend will call. All kinds of things happen like this, even before you get there. And then when you get there, you may have the first day is like total bliss. The second day, it's not so easy. You know, you've started to figure out the food isn't that great. You know, it's going to be the same old vegetarian food day after day. There's no TV in your room, and they're asking you to turn off your cell phones and iPads and things like this. And then the body's starting to hurt a little as you sit in meditation. And then mental states, emotional states can start to arise. And I always say to people, this is a good sign. This is not that you're doing it wrong. This is the entanglement or the melting of the ice coming up. Now, remember he gave a passage before where he said these are the bija, the seeds, and these seeds become accelerated and intensified under the heat of the meditation and the cultivation. So they will arise. So now he goes on to tonight's passage. He says, now even if they don't arise and you get this state, this measureless light ease, and let's see what the phrase is here. It's zidzai, those last two characters. Zidzai, it means literally self-present, but it means just totally at ease and calm. And also, Ching-an is a expression of the characters up there. Oh, can you point? Yeah, point. Great. See them? So this is often gets translated, you'll see in tonight's passage, as translated as tranquility and light ease. So sometimes affliction arises, you feel uncomfortable, you feel anxious, but sometimes this has, and okay, so let's see what the passage says tonight. This is just the initial accomplishment of a novice or a beginner. Do not take it as something mysterious and profound. Even if you have reached the state of tranquility and light ease, do not get carried away with happiness, delight. If you do, a demon, and now last night we put this in quotation marks because I want to go into this a bit, a demon of happiness will possess your mind. And this just becomes another obstacle. So this passage is really interesting. You're unraveling the obstacles, you're going through them, then you get a very positive state, and you grab onto that. You think, wow, this is really super. I hope I can hold on to this joy and bliss. And he says, then you get a demon of happiness possesses you, and this becomes an obstacle in itself. So you see how tricky this is. You think the obstacles are only the negative states that are coming. And then when a pleasant state comes, you say, oh, I'm on the right path. I've arrived. I'm almost there. If I can hold this long enough, I bet I get enlightenment. And as soon as you start doing that, everything starts to go bad because you've turned on the mind of wanting and seeking again, and that's the mind that is the well springs of afflictions. This is really tricky because then at that point you have to say the right mind is no mind, and no mind means the mind that's not seeking anything. So the no mind, the mind that's not seeking anything, is the right mind. It doesn't really mean no mind. It means no mind that's grasping, attaching, seeking. It's alert, it's available, it's open, but it's not looking for anything. And no matter what comes, you don't grab at it. But this one's a hard one. We were talking about it last night in the translation section. Some people had experienced this in meditation. It's really far out, if you get it. I won't. Anybody here have that state? Nobody acknowledge it, because now you're thinking, well, where's it going with this? Is this bad or good? It's neither bad nor good. The texts say it's neither bad nor good. It's just a sign that you're progressing, and just see it as an ordinary, everyday occurrence, nothing special. And it will pass, and you'll move on to a next state, and then a next state, and the next state, through the dhyanas, the samapadis, and so forth, until everything is let go. All states cease. Okay? So, when you have this state, it's often preceded by the opposite. Not light ease and not tranquility. Okay? Let me explain how this might work, and some of you might identify it. During the process of, say, the meditation practice, third day, fourth day, third week, fourth week, whatever you're doing, pretty soon the whole body hurts. Everything aches. Every muscle and joint and tendon and sinew is as if on fire. The hair pores feel like when you have that fever before the flu, and it's really, really uncomfortable. And the ankles hurt, the knees hurt, the hips hurt, the teeth hurt. Even the tongue hurts. Everything hurts, and you feel like you can't go on. And your mind is like this incredible blizzard, a snowstorm of emotions and feelings and thoughts. There's actually poems that describe this. It's like wandering in this dark forest of tangles and thorns and brambles, and there's no sunlight, and you feel there's no way at all. And then the text says, but then suddenly, there's a clearing and a bright meadow appears. And you walk into that meadow, and that's Zidzai Ching-an. Okay? So right at that point, if you can be patient and persevere, and so the contrast, the juxtaposition of what you had before and this is so wonderful. I don't know what to compare it to. The only thing I compare it to, when I went to the hospital, I was in really, really bad pain, and they gave me the third dose of morphine. Anybody here have morphine? I mean, legally? Okay. Right. You know when you're in pain, right? They inject it. They don't give you the pill, they inject it, so it's working within 15, 20 seconds. If you're in pain, you just go, whoa, that'd be okay. Okay? The pain goes away, and there's this warmth that goes through you. This is why it becomes addicting. But that feeling is similar to breaking through to this light ease. My teacher once said it's a little bit like if you kink a hose and the water can't go through, and then suddenly you just unbend it and the water goes right through. All your arteries and capillaries and everything just relax and open up, and there's no more pain anymore. You feel incredibly light and comfortable and happy. And you're just really happy. And you feel like you're buoyant, like you could just lift up. And you can sit there for just forever, just calm, not moving, and it's just wonderful. You don't even want to get up. Okay? This is called Zidzai or Ching-an. It's an actual state that happens in the meditation practice. Sounds pretty cool, right? But what he's warning about here is he's saying, don't get stuck here either. This is a trap. It's just a passing. In a sense, he's saying, one of the things you could say, this is the first stage of getting to a happiness that's beyond happiness. This is a later state that happens. In other words, there's a happiness that comes that doesn't have a high or low. It's just a constant happiness. And because it's constant, it's not as dramatic. You understand? Okay, I saw somebody get up and almost fall over tonight. They got up from meditation, and their leg fell asleep. And when they stood up, they almost fell over. But when the circulation comes back to the leg, you go, oh, wow, 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 wow. And it's coming back, right? Very dramatic. When the leg is fully circling, you don't, like if some of you are sitting there now, your leg, you go, wow, 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 my arms and my legs, whoa, whoa. No, it's just like natural. But if you cut it off, and it becomes cold and stiff and whatnot, and then you open it up again, that first release of the fullness back is a rush. So the light ease is a beginning stage of breaking through some obstacles that has kept you in the opposite state. But when it levels out and pans out, there's no up and down radical. It's just now it's a constant. So not to be looking for these, the reason you don't do that is because then you're state seeking. And I told you Houston's expression, right? Did I tell you in the class? No? So Houston Smith, who is 93, 94 now. He's been here many times. He donated his library to us. Famous religious scholar, wrote The World's Religions, textbook that's been used in colleges all over the world. Anyhow, he went to a Chan meditation sit in Japan, and he was after this kind of stuff. Light ease, Ching-an, and he said Satori, which is the Japanese word for the awakening experience. And so he was really frantically going after it, and his teacher would keep coming and hitting him with a stick. And we got the stick here, by the way. It's upstairs. He gave it to us. And it's given by his teacher to Houston Smith at his retreat in the 1950-something in Japan. And he said that the reason he was being hit was because he was, and this is his language, he was whoring after Satori. W-H-O-R-E. Whoring after Satori means lusting for Satori. And his teacher kept, hitting him like this too. Why is he bothering me? So he realized from that experience that if you have this mind that seeks and wants, then that's a mind that's going to obstruct you. Now, that being the case, I wanted to spend a little time, probably this week and even go into next a little bit, about part of our discussion last night. And this had to do with why we put demon in quotation marks. Okay. So obviously the Chinese for this, can you point to the Chinese word for this? Mo. And is there any kind of radical kind of picture there that would tell you? There you go.
There's a ghost here.
Ghost where?
Ghost here.
That's a ghost.
There's a bottom, and then you see there's a forest here, lots of woods.
Oh,
The ghost is a lot, like forest.
like a forest. Wow. I mean, this really conveys it. A dark forest at night, thick. And then there's the ghost. And what's the other part?
And this, someone help me out?
That's the enclosure radical. Like the radical for an enclosure, a covering. So there you are. The closure is your own body and mind. Not your house. Your own body and mind. A forest with a ghost there. Okay. So very, very vivid character. Now what I want to do with this tonight is maybe just get to some of the Western side of this, why we put it, and then next week I want to go really into the Buddhist side of this and the Ghostbusters, if you will, from the Buddhist side. But the first side, when we use the word demon, for those of you who are coming from primarily a Western or Euro-American background, when I say demon, what comes to mind? What are the thoughts, the images? Satan, right. Good. Anything else? Everybody knows what Satan is? Another entity is a demon. Okay. Okay, so the interpretation of this could be superstition. Before we go to the interpretation, let's just get the imagery first. What is the imagery it conjures up? Monster. Huh? Possession. Well, okay, possession. Yeah, what? From the hells. Hell means. Well, the exorcist. We're getting all these devils. Devils is one of the words that's used. Devils. Anything else? Evil, darkness, malevolent. And they're pretty. Demons are very pretty, right? You've seen them in the movies. No, I didn't do this tonight. I really was picking and choosing what I was going to give you tonight, okay? I wasn't going to give you the Western standard images of demons, but they are totally malformed. They look like genetic mutants of all kinds of things. They have arms coming out of their heads and legs coming out of their arms, and they have sharp, pointy teeth and different eyes over, and they're frothing and smelly and oozing, and whoa, it's really bad. And it gets, if you've seen the movie The Exorcist, don't. But this has someone who is possessed by the demon or the Satan, and she then transfigures into this really horrid little girl who can lift up in space, and she has this deep rumbling voice. Always the demons talk. Oh, last time with Kurosawa. Remember when the demon spoke? This beautiful wispy form, and all of a sudden this gravelly, grumbling voice came out? So this is where you get That's the sound of the underworld. Okay, so basically, why I put it in quotation marks is because generally now in the West, for very obvious, I'm not going to go into it, for reasons, demons have now become associated with evil, badness, malevolence, harm, disaster, and disturbance, and so on and so forth. Okay, but originally, in the Western tradition, it was much more mixed picture of what demons were. So, actually, prior to demon, there was daimon, D-A-I-M-O-N, daimon, or daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N. Those of you who read Philip Pullman's trilogy will realize. Anybody read Philip Pullman? A couple people. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, huh? Yeah, really good. So he won the Booker. He was the first British author to win the Booker for children and adults literature at the same time. It's a trilogy of books, but it's based on, well, it's hard to describe. But anyway, there are daemons in there, and these are sort of spirit beings that each person has, and they're generally good. Although if you don't treat them right, they can go the other way too. But this was closer, Pullman is closest to the early Greek notion of demons. Generally, they could be very, very good. They weren't evil. So sometimes they were called genius. The word genius comes from the Greek word that means to have this inspiring, good, elevated light that took you over. So that was when someone had genius, they had this spirit of enlightening power, and that's where Numen comes from. So Numen was translated as mind, but it meant it could be a spirit, the noumenal. And the noumenal gave you vast and broad perception of things as they really were. And then there was also, muses were also daemons of sort. You all know the muses? That's where amusing comes from. But muses were these really creative, powerful spirits that would help you in your tasks. So there was a muse for art, and muse for painting, a muse for sculpture, a muse for writing and poetry, a muse for my discipline, which was history. My muse was called Clio, C-L-I-O. And Clio would come to me when I was writing my dissertation and infuse into me. I would be possessed by Clio. And then I could just write effortlessly inspired history. So the muses were the inspiring demons, if you will, daemons, who would come and work for good. And if you read in the Iliad and the Odyssey, you'll see in the heat of battle, various spirits and muses or gods like Apollo or so forth would infuse and come into the soldiers and give them this incredible energy and courage to go forward. Now, of course, there were opposites. There were malevolent spirits and whatnot, but at least it was a very mixed world. This went on for quite a while, but then towards the Middle Ages, this started with the how shall I say it, the widespread acceptance of Christianity. Demons then became D-E-M-O-N-S, not the daemon anymore, and were almost universally negative, harmful, wicked, evil, and so forth. Okay? So even in the West, there was this mixed thing going on. So that's one level. Now, the explanations of them. Let's go into that. What's the explanation of these demons? Come on. What did you say? What does that mean? Superstition. No. Okay, so it's a kind of irrational belief in something that really doesn't exist, right? It has no basis in reality. It's just myth or imaginary. Okay? So that's one interpretation. Anybody else? Fear meaning? They come from fear. See, now that means, this is Freud. Right. So Freud doesn't say they're superstitious. He says they're real, but their origins are the human mind. They're not outside. So we have wishes and desires that are unhealthy and unwholesome, and they then become manifested as fear of demons. Or he says very more likely it's people that have recently died. And then we project our fears about death onto these beings who would come back to haunt us. So the fear of the dead is a mental projection of fear of your own mortality that gets then personified in this imaginary demon. So it's not exactly superstitious because it really grips you, but it's not real in the sense that it's external. So that's where Freud goes. There's still yet another interpretation. They're real. Okay? Let's not discount this. Okay? They're real. They exist. Now, the Catholic Church today says what? They're real. They're not to be discounted. When I grew up in a small parish in the Midwest, the most valued person at the local monastery was the exorcist. This dude was not to be messed with. He was a serious, monk priest. And when people around got possessed by the demon or Satan, he would be called to do an exorcism at the home. Yeah. It's just like in the movies, is that right? And my grandmother, who was an Irish Catholic, really believed in this. And she had contacts, so I sometimes would go to her to watch these things, and they were... I'm not going to describe it because those of you who haven't left home and still have hair, the hair would stand on end if I told you these stories. So when I grew up, through my grandmother's eyes and whatnot, this was a real world. And the adults that I knew were authorities and sober-minded people believed in this. So I didn't grow up as thinking this was superstitious or Freudian projection. This was just another part of the real world I grew up in. And so I was taught how to keep them at bay, how not to invite them in, and how to get rid of them if they did get in. Now, this was pre-Buddhist, okay? This is coming from a Western side. So one of the things that's said about this from the interpretive side is that you go back to not real. They call it personification, or what's called pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy means you attribute human feelings and emotions to inanimate things. So you project out and you make them real. So examples of personification is let's say, hostile weather. Weather's not hostile, but we call it hostile. We call it an unforgiving storm or a vicious earthquake. We attribute human emotion and feelings to inanimate things, and that's going to say, well, then these things are just that. But this realm that says they're real is a whole different take on it. How many people believe they're real? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many people think they're just superstitious, unreal, imaginary? 1, 2. Okay. Is there any other option? Oh, there we go. I was wondering where the other hands were. Okay. Oh. Okay, so your expression is actually goes back to Darwin's time, and it's called agnosticism. Now, agnosticism doesn't mean you doubt. Many people think that means doubt. It means one cannot know this through the ordinary, rational, scientific method. It doesn't deny they exist. It simply says it can't be known through ordinary knowing. That's what agnostic means. Not able to be known through gnosis, through that, but doesn't deny it exists. So that would be suspending judgment and saying, maybe I haven't experienced it, or maybe I have. I don't say they don't exist, but I couldn't confirm it. That would be an in-between state. What's another possibility?
They only exist if you believe in it?
That is another state. So this is more like Freud's thing, which says if you believe in them, then they exist. Okay, that's another one. And if you don't, they don't. until you get one, and then you wonder what happened. I had this experience. I didn't believe in them. And then I got a couple. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in you. Go away. Didn't work. Okay, what else? Didn't work. I was saying, well, I don't believe in you. You're gone. I try to do them at taxes every year. I don't believe in them. Go away. They don't go away. They come again to haunt me. The other possibility is both. They both exist only in your mind, and they really exist. Why I'm pushing this envelope is this is sort of where Buddhism is going on this, is to say there's a porosity, there's a porousness between out there and in here. We think of ourselves as autonomous monads cut off from the outside world, but in fact we know from nature, air and earth and whatnot, we are permeable. And from a Buddhist point of view, you could say these are both real and also imaginary simultaneously, or manufactured from your consciousness, but also real. So this is a very, I want to get into this next week, but what I wanted to share with you this week is to go into, one of the words that's used is possessed, okay? Possessed by a demon. Let me just read you some of the, this is very interesting on possess. Possess means to hold, to occupy, reside in, to take ownership of. So to be possessed by the demon means you've been taken. To seize and take control of. To bring or cause to fall under the influence, domination, or control of some emotional or intellectual response. So in possession, you can be possessed by a feeling, an emotion, a strong, or you can be taken hold of. Now, the other interesting word in English is obsession. And they're very similarly related because obsession means having or showing an excessive compulsive concern with something. And the language used is haunted. Haunted. You see, even in the etymology, the origins of this is not just rational, irrational, somewhere in between. Haunted, taken up, preoccupied. This is obsession. It means influence or control by a powerful force such as a strong emotion, by love possessed, to quote Shakespeare. Okay? So, what I'm suggesting a little bit here is obsession is more the inner manifestation of being taken over. You're taken over by your own obsessive, compulsive, whatnot. But possession is expression of a similar thing, but more of an external factor to it. And the words move back and forth interchangeably. Now, this is getting closer to the Buddhist thing I'll go into next week of how the inner and outer work in some kind of synchronicity. It's really interesting. But tonight I just want to show a couple of historical or literary examples of the Western side of this. So I'm going to take three if we have time. The first one I want to do is, who was here last week? He's not here this week. Socrates. Okay, so for most of you, Socrates, can you bring up that image I sent you? The image that, it's just a picture. Tonight. No, there should be an image. There was a picture attached. No, you didn't get the picture. It was right there. Yeah. Open that text. A ghost took it away. No, keep going. Oh. Okay, well, sorry. I was going to show you Socrates' ghost. Okay, draw up, just search Delphic Oracle and see what you get an image. Not, yeah. There they are, all the little ghosts. See if you can find Delphic Oracle. There you go. Get an image of Delphic Oracle. There she is, the priestess. See her? She's sitting there. And then try to get there's a nice Elysian one showing it. Like, right, too fast. Just the hillside with the circle and whatnot. That's okay, yeah. So anyways, well, let's go to Socrates. Socrates, anybody know who Socrates was? It was an early search system at UC Berkeley. No. Who's Socrates? Ancient Greek rebel rouser, right. In China, we call him a purveyor of social unrest. So he was a rabble rouser. He was called a gadfly. And the gadfly, everybody know gadfly? It's the fly that bugs you and then sits on you and bites you, and then you flush it away, and it goes around. And the horse is always whipping its tail out to get rid of it. This is also the meaning of teacher. So he said a teacher must be a gadfly. If you get negative ratings by your students and sour evaluations on your assessment and outcomes as a teacher, you're doing a good job. Because your job as a teacher is to disturb the complacency of your students. Cause them to painfully have to think and examine. So the first thing Socrates says, how's it going? Be careful what you say. Oh, it's going really good. What is good? Well, good is like happy, but happy doesn't last. How could it be good? Boom, boom, boom. And before you know it, you're like, I'm sorry I answered that question. I mean, he got a young man who was going off to war, and he said, where are you going? I'm going off to war. What for? Patriotism. What's that? And before long, the student was paralyzed with doubts. Well, it's love of country. But is love of country patriotism, or should you love the gods? Which comes first? If the gods tell you not to kill, then how can you love your country which tells you to kill? What's patriotism? So that's why he was a disturber of social unrest. He was, actually, the writings we have, he didn't write. Another one of those guys. Jesus doesn't write, Buddha doesn't write, Socrates didn't write. What's wrong with these guys? Sixth Patriarch didn't write either. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, okay? So, like if my student turns in an exam and says, Socrates, Plato, Buddha didn't write, I'm not either. Plato wrote. So what we know of him comes from Plato. So basically, Socrates is the epitome of rational, logical thought and discourse. That's what we think. But actually, he was possessed. I'm going to make this argument tonight, okay? So Socrates someone goes to the Delphic oracle. Socrates is asking them to ask the oracle a question about himself. The answer comes back from the oracle. Now, you know what the Delphic oracle is? Oh, the Delphic oracle is like a search engine. It's like a Google search engine, but it doesn't have any form or shape. It's a mysterious divine mediation between the world beyond and this world. It's a medium, okay, or channeling. And usually a priestess, it was usually women who held the oracle positions, and they would just like roll their eyes and go into these trances or whatever as you answer the question, and they would voice an answer from the oracle, not from themselves, because they were just channeling this. You're thinking, wait, I didn't think ancient Greece. Yeah, this is ancient Greece, okay? And Socrates is going there, and he gets the answer. He's wanting to know, who's the wisest person in all of Greece? And the oracle says, Socrates. And he says, BS. I'm not the wisest man. I'm going to prove that oracle wrong. That oracle now has given me a mission. I'm on a mission to prove that oracle wrong. And that's what he goes out to do, to prove that he's not the wisest man in Greece. Okay? So he is now empowered by this sense of divine mission. That's what's driving him. Not a search for truth or anything like that. He's got to resolve this riddle from the oracle. So that's what's left of the place. This is in Delphi. The Delphic oracle is the most important of the Greek oracles. That's why it's called the navel of the world. That spot in the geomancy of the Greeks was the navel of the world. That's where they located it there. They felt that was the point to the other world. So when you meditate, isn't that interesting, huh? Contemplating the navel, the Dantian and whatnot. This was the outside manifestation of that. They felt that's where the oracle had a direct channel to the beyond. Okay? So he goes off and he gets in big trouble. Basically, he follows this oracle, even it means he becomes infirm, he loses all his wealth, and eventually he loses his life. Following the oracle. He's not rational. He's willing to give up his wealth, his health, and his very life in the end to pursue this oracle. And when he goes on trial, because they put him on trial because he's really causing a lot of problems. Can you imagine? Everybody he meets, he asks him a question. Are you wise? Because I know I'm not, but I was told I was. This is kind of tricky. I was told I was the wisest. I don't think I am. You must be wiser. So he'd go to all the politicians, all the philosophers, and they would give an answer. Well, yes, I'm wise because, and he'd say, but what about that? So he'd start this questioning thing, and pretty soon they didn't feel so wise anymore. Now, let me tell you, when you make someone who thinks they're wise not feel like they're wise, they aren't happy. They're pretty upset. You go to a senator and say, how about that law you passed? It's for the good of the people. What is the good of the people? Boom, 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 boom. So he gets a lot of people upset. So what do they accuse him of? What, anybody know what he was accused of, his crime? Social unrest, yeah. Corrupting the youth, which means disturbing their loyalty to the state and to the institutions and to the normal life. The Buddha could be accused of that and was. Corrupting the youth because he allowed young men and women to leave home when? When they were 65, upon retirement. No, when did he allow them to leave home? 19. That's when you can drink. 19, you can leave home. I don't know if there's a causal relation, but anyhow. So they could leave home at 19. This disrupted the social order. They were supposed to go out, marry, settle into the careers, have children, and then go forth as sannyasis or shramanas at the last stage of their life. Not the early stages. That was the Hindu way. By allowing them to go through the 19th age, it really disrupted things. Okay. And he's also accused of impiety. So corrupting youth impiety means he was not honoring the gods. So what they said, you're following this god, you're deranged. The real gods wouldn't do this. He goes on trial, he refuses to change his position, and he ends up, what? Winning. And he's freed, and he lives happily ever after. No. What happens? Right, the way you die then, your death sentence was to drink hemlock. Everybody know what hemlock is? Within 6 blocks of here, I can find some. Yeah, it's all over California. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. When I go up the hills, it's up in Tilden too. Oh yeah. On our pilgrimage, I had this book, Searching for Wild Asparagus or something, because I was making lunch every day, and then I discovered, wow, this wonderful plant can be made into tea. And it's a really healthy tea. So I was out in the field gathering this plant for tea to serve Hung Shuren at lunch. And this car stops, and this guy gets out. He's got field clothes on. He says, hi, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm a Buddhist monk. He said, oh, well, what are you gathering there? I said, I'm gathering this wonderful plant for tea. And he says, well, I'm a botanist from Cal Poly. I was just passing by. And he said, the tea you're gathering, that much of it will kill a cow. I said, really? He says, yeah, what you're looking for looks like the same plant, but on the other side there's little red rust spots. The rust spots indicate that it's hemlock. So I thought, whoa, we almost had a Socratic experience on the highway. And I left it. Same thing happened with mushrooms, so that's another story. So Socrates then takes a hemlock and he dies. But the point I'm trying to make is that he's obsessed, or you could say possessed, by this oracle, number one. Okay, number 2 example. Can we put up Shakespeare's Hamlet? Everybody know Hamlet? How many people have read Hamlet? Don't say I saw the movie. Okay. Okay, so everybody knows Hamlet is the prince, right? What's the story? Give me the first lines. What happens? How does it open? He goes back to Denmark. His father has died. He suspects it wasn't of natural causes. That's why he says, something is rotten in Denmark. That's one of the lines. Now, although he has a suspicion, he's not sure. And how does he become sure? He gets CIS, or whatever that, service to come in and do detailed, genetic analysis. And no, what does he do? How does he figure out that his father was killed? Not ghost. Whoa. Here we go again. A ghost. So you have the line up here. Let's just look at it. Oh, for fun, by the way, I gave you two samples. The original text and then what's called the modern text. So you'll get to see how modern language and see what you prefer. Okay, so there he is. He's out on the patio. This is in the first act, right? And he's walking around the patio, and the movie is really great. It's a dark night, there's a slight moon, and it's foggy and misty. And then out of that shadow somewhere, he sees something moving. And he goes and looks at it, and it looks like someone appears, and then they fade and appears, and then it really appears, and it's his father. But as a phantom, as a ghost. And then his friend, while this happens, Horatio comes. And Horatio says, oh, day and night, this is wondrous strange. This is really, my God, this is unbelievably strange. That's, okay? Next line. Hamlet says, and therefore, as a stranger, give it welcome. Welcome this ghost. Then he says, and this is the line I want to stress, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. So Horatio says, wait, superstitious, weird. Have you taken acid? What's going on here? And he says to Horatio, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy. Now, look at the translation. This is why the modern is really bad. Sorry. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than you dreamed of. What? Than you dreamed of? No. Because this philosophy is very important. Horatio's a student at Wittenberg, okay, at the German university, which is the Protestant center of rational humanist thought at the time. And his natural philosophy is actually the science of the day. So what we call science today was then called natural philosophy. He's a scientist of his time. That science consists of natural science, ethics, and logic. That's how they made sense of things. So Horatio is the quintessential scientist. And he's saying, but come, here as before, never so help you mercy, how strange and odd soever I bear myself, as perchance hereafter shall I meet to put an antic disposition on. Antic disposition is the madness he's talking about when he becomes possessed. Okay, I won't go on. If you want, you can read this. Then go down, he says, the ghost then talks to him, basically, and makes him swear to take an oath to revenge. Revenge my death, my son. Okay? Hamlet says to him, rest, rest, perturbed spirit. So, gentlemen, now he's written to his friends, with all my love do I commend me to you, and what so poor a man as Hamlet is may do to express his love and friendly to you. God willing shall not let us go together. So he's expressing his oath, and he wants him to join in the revenge of his father. And what does the ghost tell him? What does his father tell him how he died? He was murdered by whom? See, this gets really thick. Who murders him? Claudius, his uncle. The brother of his father murders him. And then, marries his mother. So now the play goes on, and the big discussion in the play, is he mad? Or is he sane and pretending he's mad? Or is he both? And is he possessed or merely pretending he's possessed? You see? And this is never resolved. You can read this play and you can go many ways. But I'm saying there's an ambiguity here as to whether he's possessed by this ghost and spirit and therefore in its power, or whether he's just using it. And he has a really beautiful line where he himself doesn't know if he's possessed. A lot of people forget this. Let me read you this line. Sorry if I wax into this stuff, but the spirit that I have seen, this ghost that I have seen, he says, may be the devil. Okay? May be the devil. Because the devil hath powers to assume a pleasing shape. He says, yet perhaps it's out of my weakness and my melancholy. And it's never resolved. So now we're back to this thing that you were saying. Maybe the melancholy and weakness has conjured up the father to come back because he's so grief-stricken he wants to have some resolution, as people dream of those who are dead immediately after. Or maybe it's real, and the father is not happy. He can't leave because he's been killed in this way, which is very Chinese, by the way. The ghosts and spirits that hang around are those who are unhappy. Things aren't solved, and they want to settle their score. By the way, this leads to a lot of rituals around family funerals because the score settling often has to do with brothers and sisters and relatives. That's where the score is the heaviest. So an anthropologist I knew said a lot of the grave rituals about the burying and the distancing and the offerings of food and whatnot is to appease or keep that spirit away. So it's like, oh, you're going away, I'm sad, and I hope you stay away. There's this kind of ambivalence there about the dead. So this is Freud's thing. It's about the fear of the dead returning. And that's why if you wish somebody dead and they die, you have this real, and who hasn't wished somebody? Oh, not me. Yes, we all have wished somebody be out of the way. And Freud says that's a basis. But in Hamlet, you see it's not very clear which way it could go. Oh, we're out of time. What was the third one I was going to... Ooh, the third one's really interesting, but I'll stop tonight. Anybody guess what the third one might be? I'm bringing out these themes because next week I want to go into the Buddhist ones and show you how the Buddhist works on this and how there's many carryovers from this subtlety to the Buddhist ones. But the Buddhists actually have 4 categories of demons, 3 of which are internal, and 1 of which is outside. And then I will tell you stories about how the 2 connect. And so it's not really a distinct difference. And these are my own stories. So if you don't want to hear hair-raising stories, don't come next week. But what the third, the Western one I was going to tell you, anybody want to guess? It's a very interesting, huh? Casper. No, it wasn't Casper, actually. Anybody else? Huh? A very famous one. Dr. Faustus. Okay, there's an original Faust by Goethe, but then there's Dr. Faustus that takes place at the time of Shakespeare, and it's written by Marlowe. And Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, just to give you the plot, and we can go into next week, is, again, another scientist. Gee, I wonder why it's always scientists. But he's a scientist, and he's really cool. He knows everything. He's really smart, and he's bored. And he figures out that science isn't giving him all the answers to the riddle of life, and he wants to know this desperately. And then his mentor appears, who is Mephistopheles, another name for the devil. Now, how he appears in a pleasing form and says, oh, I can give you that knowledge. Really? Oh, yeah. And he shows him some of his powers, and they're pretty awesome, right? And he says, just sign here. Well, yeah, I want the powers, so just sign here. What's the contract? You can have my powers, and I will be with you for 24 years. And you'll be able to do anything. You can seduce beautiful women. You can get all the jewels and treasures in the world. You can know everything there is to know. You can master the secrets of elixirs of immortality and poisons and so forth. You can travel through space. All that I give to you for 24 years. So he's like, what's the fine print? Well, after 24 years, you're mine. You come with me and you go to hell forever. And so he's going, to sign or not to sign? That is the question. What does he do? He signs. And you're going, and at that time, 2 angels come in and say, don't sign! Don't sign! He goes, go away. I want to know. My PhD was nothing. I want to know this. And he signs. And then he gets that. But at the end of 24 years, so this expression, to sell your soul to the devil, comes from this story. Now, there's modern versions of this. But again, he then gets possessed and has this power, almost seen to be genius, you see. But it's called a Faustian dealer, a Faustian pact. Now it's used in all kinds of modern senses. Anybody want to give me some modern usages of this? Which is? Right. Modern example, who learned guitar, but he sold his soul to the devil, and the devil came to take him away. The Devil and Daniel Webster, more of a high school literature. Any of you see the movie with, what's his name? Who's the Italian actor? Al Pacino. What, is it The Firm or something? Devil's Advocate. And what's that about? It's a modern version of the Faustian tale, right? Some of you know this movie? Pacino's the devil in a 3-piece suit for a high-ranking law firm. And he gets this young man to come in after he's graduated from Harvard Law or something, and wow, he gives him all kinds of stuff, great house, all these perks and whatnot. But he's basically signed on to be an apprentice to the devil in this firm. And then later, Pacino changes his appearance to show who he really is, but it's too late. The guy's already signed in. So, I'm not saying all corporations are, but you can think, and this is used in a moral sense, to think before you sign on the line and choose a career or anything, whether you're making a Faustian deal of some sort. So this is the third example I was going to bring up in the Western sense, and I won't go into that. But then what I'll do next week is we'll go on, because the passages that are coming are talking about if you can't turn this state, then what Buddhist techniques are available to work with this. And here's where it's neither self or other, inside or out. It's this very porous state that you're working with as the mind works through this. And it's very useful to have the Western background first so we understand why we put quotation marks around demons. Okay? So, and then next week will be the stories, and they're all pretty embarrassing, but I'm willing to share them with you. Okay, is there anything to announce, or do you have questions? By the way, I don't do exorcisms, even though my grandma... Okay, I laugh at this. Let me tell you, this is one story I can tell you true. My grandmother did have some abilities like this. I don't know where she got them, and I didn't believe them. And one night I was sitting with her in her living room. She made me come over every night and say the rosary with her. Totally boring. Anybody ever say that? You know what I mean by saying the rosary? It's like these meditation beads, only it's Catholic prayers, and you go through the whole bunch. And we were sitting there after the rosary, and she was looking out, and she said, Cousin John just died. Now, okay, we're there in the Midwest. Nothing's going on. There's no radio, TV. She says, Cousin John. I said, well, how do you know? Because nobody called. There's not. I said, when did he die? She said, just now. I said, well, how do you know? She said, I saw his shadowy spirit leave and go across the front here, the yard. Oh, yeah. Whoa, Grandma. An hour later, the phone rings. Cousin John has just died. So I'm just telling you the story. What do you make of it? Her projection? Well, Freud would say, yeah, you can project afterwards, but beforehand? Or she wished Cousin John died and that caused him to die? I don't know. You know, there's more things to heaven and earth, Horatio. So, enough. Announcements, anything?
We got going in session March 24th to 31st. Other than that, all the schedule is the same.
Your class is still going?
Saturday?
Monday? Qigong class?
Yeah.
And tomorrow night Avatamsaka. Round
Next
table
Thursday, this upcoming Thursday.
this Thursday?
Just so people know, actually, we invited a fan pastor, one of the monks from the city of 10,000 Buddhas. You probably know him. He'll be speaking in the Avatamsaka Sutra in Chinese. I'll translate to English. So that's something a little bit different.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Okay. So we'll do the transference now. And I hope you have pleasant dreams.
As in Horatio.
Mm-hmm.